Sounds like he's right out there on that point. We're out here on the Ozark St. Francis National Forest listening for turkeys for the upcoming youth weekend. There he was again, way out there. Scouting and doing your homework, educating yourself on where the turkeys are at is a lot of the game when it comes to turkey hunting, knowing what they're going to do and how they're going to react throughout the day. Culturally, turkey hunting is instilled in this area up here. It goes back centuries. It is a way of life. It is an opportunity to get out in the woods, listen to wildlife, see wildlife. I like to hunt in an oak-dominated forest. Turkeys love oaks. They love the acorns. That's where you're going to find the wildlife, is in a forest that is dominated by oaks.
An oak woodland is a very open, wooded community, and most of the biodiversity of plant life being mainly grasses and wildflowers on the ground.
When it's at its best, it's just so many different species. And so as an ecologist and as a botanist, I get excited to see so many plant species in a very small area.
We've got more Scutellaria ovata.
There's a high diversity here, and that's one of the things that ecologists really value, because it just indicates that they're healthy and they're going to be more resilient. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, this forest was in a very different condition. It was unhealthy and it was on a bad trajectory. And one of the indicators of that was the outbreak of the red oak borer and all the damage it did.
At one point, there were so many oak borers in the system that we could stand still in the forest and actually hear them eating away at the wood and the trees.
Around the year 2000 to 2003, we had an extreme drought that was region-wide for multiple years that was a second stressor for the oaks. Between the drought and the red oak borer, we began to see a large die-off of oaks.
Oaks are a keystone species across the eastern U.S., and they're important to a whole host of wildlife, over 100 species. A loss of oak alters the system and the wildlife that depend on it.
When we lost those large blocks of oaks, we lost that food source for wildlife and that economic balance for humans, for wood products, for hunting. Something had to be done to save the species, and it needed to be done quickly.
We started this process by forming a team of people, a diverse group of scientists and ecologists, foresters, fire scientists.
We all came to the table to develop prescriptions, to leave mature oaks in the overstory to still produce that mast, but still see that regeneration on the ground level. We knew we also needed to bring in prescribed fire to help clean off that leaf litter and really get the forbs going to provide more food for wildlife.
We started to monitor those results and see if we were getting the changes that we expected in the ecosystem. Here you're standing on Raspberry Mountain, which was one of our first restoration projects. When I first started, this landscape was all closed canopy with no understory, but leaf litter. You couldn't walk through it. And 20 years later, standing here, it just makes me tear up because here it's working. By thinning these woods and putting prescribed fire in here, there's thousands of oak sprouts and mid-story oaks out here. We brought oaks back from the dead here.
People in my line of work in conservation and ecology have sometimes a hard time coming to terms with the destruction, the degradation, the species lost that we see every day. This place is the exception. Here, we're putting it back. We're restoring it, we're seeing it flourish again. These landscapes are a part of our heritage. They're part of our human history. They're a part of our cultural history. They're a part of our natural history. They deserve a right to be here too. We can still recover it. And that's the cool part of this site.